also known as Deb. Okay, so I'm going to get us started with the intro on all about continuing education. And as we think about continuing education, I want to just give you that sense that this is a very big topic. There are lots of different ways of learning, and what we're going to try to do is give you some ways of thinking about continuing education, and give you examples of how it can be used for your benefit, either in looking for a job or perhaps just developing a particular interest or skills. But there's an awful lot to learn, and we won't be able to cover everything. So to Raul's point, if you do have any questions, certainly feel free to ask. And if we don't know the answers, we can always look for them and give them to you next week, because if we move on to slide 2, we have divided this topic into 2 pieces. Today, chapter 1, we'll start with just thinking about what continuing education actually is, what its benefits are, and then begin to explore some of the questions around whether continuing education is good for me. Is it something that I should think about as a way to learn more about some topic? We'll talk a little bit about how it's different from college, and then we'll get into the different types of continuing education. And we're just going to give you a framework for thinking about continuing education, because there are many, many different ways of learning, as you can imagine. And we'll get into the practical. We'll ask the question, how do I pay for continuing education? Sometimes you do have to pay, sometimes it's free. And then a little bit about, well, where do I go to find these resources? How do I go? Where do I go to find continuing education classes or training? Next week, next Wednesday, we'll focus in on one type of continuing education, which is called learning a trade. Now, Mimi or Lydia, do you have an idea of what a trade is, an example of a job, a trade job? Can you think of an example?
Yes.
Okay.
CNA program.
I'm sorry?
CNA program. Nursing assistant.
Well, okay, a nursing program, especially those assistant positions and so forth, because sometimes nursing is very, very high level, but sometimes it's the people who are working with the patients. Absolutely, nursing. Any other ideas about a trade job? How about an electrician? Or a plumber? Or a painter? There are many, many jobs in this country where you need special training, you need special knowledge to do the job, but you're not going to get it at college. And in general, if you think about those jobs, those are normally considered trade jobs. So we will talk about trade jobs next week. And then the question is, how do I decide if learning a trade is the right decision for me? Where to go to learn that trade job? Again, might as well be practical. How do I pay for it? And finally, we'll give you some examples of how to learn a trade. And maybe that'll also prompt some questions about thinking about whether this makes sense for you. So if we could move on to the next slide, let's talk about continuing education in general. Continuing education is formal instruction, and there are usually some specific reasons for it. The first might be to remain current in your career. My favorite example of this is auto mechanics. That's a trade job. My dad grew up on a farm. He knew how to fix anything that rolled, tractors, cars. And so, of course, when I was a girl, he always fixed our cars. When he was about, I don't know, let's say 70 years old, so he fixing his cars all through his whole life, he just shook his head and he said, Barb, I can't fix these cars anymore. Too much electronics. So there's an example of, and he didn't even train to be an auto mechanic, but he could have been one. There's an example of how you have to keep learning to stay current in a career like auto mechanics. A car almost is a rolling computer these days. So that's one example. Another use for continuing education is to develop employable skills. You may be very good at a particular job, but you want to add to the skills that you have, and this is one way to do it. Of course, there's the possibility of training for a new job. You have a job, it's okay, but you'd like to have a new job, a better job, and many people use continuing education to go back and learn the skills to get a different job. And finally, there's the notion, the idea of developing your personal interests. Now, sometimes this is just because you're interested in something and you want to learn more. You love to cook and you want to get better at it. And maybe share some of your special recipes, special dishes with your friends, maybe, and share them with your family, of course. So you can get better at some activities just because you want to, because it's fun and it makes you feel good about yourself. But this idea also ties into this final point, which is develop additional income streams. What in the world is an income stream? Well, think of it as another way to make a little money. What if you love to take pictures of your family and friends? And it's just fun, but you want to do a better job of taking pictures of your family and friends. And so you decide to take a class in photography. And you discover, and I have a sister-in-law who is a beautiful photographer now. She takes beautiful photographs. Well, some people decide that's a good way to make extra money. You don't just photograph your friends and your family. Maybe you decide to photograph a wedding or a special social gathering, and you get paid for it. So that's not your full-time job, but it is an additional income source for you, another income stream. So that's the idea behind how continuing education can open up for people other ways of making money. So if we can move on to the next slide. Let's think about this a little bit. Let's think about something you might have learned recently. And it could be at work, in a class, maybe from a book, something your friend told you, maybe it was on the internet or on TV. Can anybody think of an example of something you've learned recently? Can I give you an example?
I can give you an example.
Okay, Deb.
So I like to watch cooking shows on TV, and I've learned a lot of new recipes lately.
Okay.
Those are things that I can share with my family and my friends. And when I was with my family in Florida, like I was saying before, I made some of those things for my parents.
Aha. There you go. It's a very simple way to take something and, like learning from television, and then integrate it into a social activity like a lovely meal with your family. Anybody have another example? Yeah, Mimi.
I learned for my friends how so many stuff to show me, like especially cooking.
Mm-hmm.
She showed me how to cook different culture, different country foods. So how you set up in a table if I have some guests, especially like different country friends. So she showed me how you cook, and she showed me how set up at the table.
Oh, nice. Now, do you think that could help you with your family or in your work or with your friends?
Yes, especially my kids and my husband.
Mm-hmm.
I cook better.
Aha.
So it was so good.
Yeah, so sometimes continuing education experience can be just make you feel good.
Yeah.
One, because you've learned something, and two, because you're able to share it with somebody else. That experience can be very positive, even if it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the work you're doing right at the moment. Okay.
Barb,
Yeah.
what about what we're doing today? Wouldn't we consider that continuing education?
Well, as a matter of fact, I was thinking of an example. The Literacy Council just sponsored a day-long workshop for teachers. And Deb and I and Raul are teachers. And we went to that day-long learning. And actually, in the last presentation that you folks saw, we took some of the learnings from one of those presentations, actually two, and we put them into the presentation that you saw a month ago. So there's an example of going to a class, and then in our work, which is volunteer work, but it's still work, we put more information in to help the students who were there understand better what we were talking about. So all kinds of different ways of taking learning and then applying it to different parts of your life. Okay, shall we move on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Benefits of continuing education. I'm sure you could guess some of these, but let's go through them. Increase your chances for promotion. Of course, you go and take a class or get a certificate. It's not going to guarantee that you'll get a promotion, but it certainly is going to increase the chances for a promotion, because if you can work at a higher level because you've learned something new for your job, that can mean a promotion. That's what companies like to see, is a higher level of performance. Another benefit is an increase in your salary, the possible increase in your salary. Again, the same idea. You've got better skills, and your employer is going to think, well, I like that when you can do a better job, and I will pay more for a better job. Continuing education can also open that opportunity, and we've already started to talk a little bit about this, around increasing your ability to change careers, to move from one job to a different job. And certainly certificate programs, and we'll get into the details, are examples where you can learn a lot about a new job so that you can just switch. And this also ties to this idea of improve the jobs you can get. If you have more skills, you have more choices. You don't have to just take any job. You can say, no, I have this skill and I have that skill and I have this other skill. And that's a more valuable set of contributions to a company. And back to personal development and what you like, the benefits of continuing education, even if you're not thinking about how does this help me in my job, it can increase your own personal development, as we talked about, not just, I know how to do a nicer dinner, but I enjoyed doing it and I enjoyed how happy my family was. And I learned about being organized in making the food and presenting the food. And you never know how those learnings may add up over time. That can improve, but whether it's a salary increase or changing careers or personal development, whether it could be a better job, it could be more money. Those all are possible ways of improving your lifestyle. And again, as we mentioned, finally, the benefits of continuing education can create additional ways of making money that may be part of the job that you have, or might be a different type of work. But it gives you that choice. It gives you that option.
So Carol.
My picture isn't up on the screen, so I can't tell what you're saying here. But Barbara, I agree with everything you said. And I would also like to add that this can also enhance one's respect for one's own abilities and give you the courage and the confidence to learn other new things and to take on additional challenges.
Well said. Well said. I think that's a really important, it's very reinforcing. It feels good.
Yeah, so just to summarize what Barb and Carol just said, this is sort of the picture that says, if you get more education, if you do continuing education, you just get more opportunities. You get more opportunities to be a better person, to learn new things, to maybe have a better job, to maybe just learn new skills and just be interested in things. And like Carol just said, is that you build competence to do other things as well. So that was a really good summing up. Okay, we're going to keep going. And we're going to talk about whether we think that continuing education is a good idea. Is it right? Is it right for you now? Is it right for you in the future? So there's a couple different things you have to know. You have to know your goals. So what's a goal? Mimi, what's a goal?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Okay, my goal is I want to learn more English, more understand my skill. That's my goal.
Okay, so a goal is something that you want to have happen, right?
Yeah.
Right. So Mimi's goal is to learn English more. So there's goals for continuing education. And some of them are things like Barbara already talked about a little bit, that it's the same type of work, but maybe more responsibility. Maybe you get a promotion. So maybe from a nursing assistant where you start, you turn into a nurse practitioner. Maybe it's a different job and you take one set of skills that you have, and because you've learned those, you can then learn the next skill a little bit more easily. So maybe you're a landscaper and you've been putting in some outdoor lighting, and then you become an electrician after you get some training to do that. So that could be a movement, a goal of something that somebody might want to do. And then we talked about development of personal interest. So if you're a parent, maybe you want to be a school volunteer. I have a personal interest in pottery. And so I took classes and now I make some of my own pottery.
Mm.
So, you know, that's something that I'm able to do. This mug is something that I made. And then more secure job prospects. So what does that mean? So we know that there are jobs that come and go. So a lot of people who were working in the restaurant industry had lost their jobs in this whole pandemic, right? People who were working in the kitchens as waiters and waitresses, who were doing busing duties, those people got laid off because people weren't going to restaurants. So there are some jobs that, regardless of what the economy is doing, all of the rest of business, they're a little bit more secure. They're a little bit more sure that they're not going to lose their jobs. And so things like an accountant, you always have to pay taxes, right? Regardless of anything else that's going on. So accountants still had to work and still had work. So that might be one of your goals. And it's important not what the goal is, but just to know what your goal is. So a lot of different people have different goals when they go for continuing education. But if you know what your goal is, it will help you decide what you're going to do and how long it's going to take and how you're going to approach it. So the next thing to know is to know your skills and talent. So what does that mean? Skills means things that you already know how to do. Talents are things that you're good at and that you like to do. So you might have some things that you know how to do, but you're not so thrilled about them. So that would be a skill. Your talents are things that you do really well. So if you have a skill and talent for formal education and you already have let's say a high school degree or a GED, and those are things that will help you move into the next jobs that you want to go to, that's a good thing just to know and to put on a list. And job experience is another thing. So when we look at job experience, and you guys both, Mimi and Lydia, you did the interviewing and you did the resume building, it's very important in the job experience area to know how long you worked, when you worked, what kinds of jobs you had, and where you worked, right? So we talked about all of those when we were looking at job searching, but that's something that you should be able to figure out from that where you want to go next. And then personal talents are things that you do well, and personal interests are things you like to do. So there's a picture here of, kids. So maybe you're interested in childcare, and maybe if you want to be certified to be a childcare person, maybe you also want to be certified to be a teacher's assistant. Maybe you want to be a nursing assistant specializing in pediatrics with children. So those are things that are goals. And then based on where you are today as a child care worker already, you could expand it. We're going to talk, I think next week, about somebody who really liked cooking and baking and wanted to set up his own business selling cakes. So that would be a talent that he already knows how to bake really nice things, but it's also an interest because it's something that he really likes to do and he wants to do more of. Okay?
Yeah.
Any questions about that so far? So we have goals, we have skills and talents, and then we have to talk about resources. So resources are the things that you need to have to be able to do these things. Resources are a bunch of different things that are slightly different from each other, but you have to have all of them. you have to have time. You guys know that when you're going to these classes, that you have to have time, that you can make time for the class. You have to make time for the homework. You have to make time to practice, because if you don't, you're not going to get better, right? And there's not a lot of point in doing it. We've talked a lot about money when we talked about the college, paying for college, and we're going to talk more about paying for other types of continuing education today. But you know that you're going to have to buy books, you're going to have to pay tuition, you're going to have to pay for courses sometimes, you're going to have to pay for materials. And so time and money are big, big, big resources. Equipment. So if you're interested in going into computers, you might need special computers. You might not have the right stuff at home yet. You might need different software. You might need a different level of internet access. So, you know, when you're doing very, very complicated things, you need more broadband. And so all of those things for equipment are necessary. So the guy who wants to bake, he might need a lot more equipment of different size pans and different things to decorate cakes. That would be equipment for that job. And then, just like Mimi said, you're going to need good enough English for whatever it is that you're going to be doing. And so you need to be comfortable reading and speaking usually in English. And that's something that I know you guys are all working on because you're with the Literacy Council. So those are the resources that we're talking about. Okay? All right, so Barb.
Okay, let's look real quickly at the difference between college and continuing education. What is the difference? Well, in the first place, continuing education normally is a shorter time frame. It might be a few weeks or months, maybe as much as a year, depending on, again, getting back to Deb's point, what is your goal? What are you trying to learn? If you're switching from one career to another, that may take longer than if you want to do a little bit of learning about how to cook better, for example. College, as I bet you remember, is a longer time frame. There are the 2-year programs and the 4-year programs, and we're talking about full-time attendance. So that's about as short as they get. So quite a bit of difference in the amount of time that it takes. Continuing education may give you a certification for special skills. There are a number of programs, and we'll start to explore them today and then next week, of these types of skills where when you complete the program, you get a certification, and that enables you, qualifies you for certain kinds of jobs. And if you did not have that certification, you would not be able to apply for the job. Those would be certain nursing assistants or electricians or plumbers. All of those people have to be certified to be able to do the work in that type of work in this country. So this is an important goal, if that's the type of job that you want, is to get certification. Now in college, what you get is a degree. You get credit and you earn a degree. The degree usually represents a level of academic learning. Yes, there are some degrees. If you're an accountant, you want to be an accountant and you get a degree in accounting. That certainly is similar. It's not a certification in accounting. There are those as well. But it does send a strong message to an employer that, yes, this person has passed all of those college courses related to accounting and meets our, as a college, criteria for knowing the accounting discipline. So there's a little bit of difference there. And finally, continuing education is normally less expensive. It's certainly shorter, and that's one reason. Compared to college, as you probably remember, college can be very expensive. Not surprisingly, a 4-year college degree is going to cost quite a bit. And certainly even the 2-year college degree is going to be normally more expensive than a continuing education program. All right, so let's move on. Let's think a little bit about the types of continuing education. What we've done is tried to...
Yes. I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes, about nursing. About nursing, is it required to have a training before going to college, or you can go to college without a training?
You mean there are certificates for nursing.
Yeah.
And so in many cases, they are part of the community college system. Montgomery County College, Montgomery College has nursing certificates. They're not requiring you to have a nursing degree already. For some nursing programs, they are part of a college curriculum, a college program that's 4 years long. So you would have to do your homework to figure out what type of nursing job you want. You might, if you're, okay, I have a high school diploma, maybe I've taken a couple of courses in college, but I don't have a college degree. You might start with asking, what certificate programs does a community college like Montgomery College have? And if I did that, what kind of a job could I get as sort of one choice? And then if I went to the community college for 2 years and studied nursing, how would that be different? And my suggestion would be, there are people at the college who can help you answer some of those questions, so to give you an idea of what those choices are. But you don't have to have a college degree to get a nursing certificate. There are some special programs. Nursing is so needed in this country that those colleges are working very hard to try to get people who are interested into programs that prepare them at least for very basic kinds of nursing jobs. So that's always worth asking about.
Okay, Barb, Fatma also has a question.
Who has a question?
Yes, I have a
Fatma?
question, please. My name is Fatima. So, yeah, I did a nursing CNA. Is free, and then I didn't find a job yet, but I want to be first. I want to know if there is another program free and can I take to be professional nurse, like I am preparing to be a nurse. So because I did nursing in my country 2 years.
Okay, so you were a nurse in your country, and I guess the first question is, are you certified in this country to be a nurse?
Yes, I did CNA in 3 months ago.
Okay.
I'm waiting the certificate. I didn't receive it yet.
Okay. So you're waiting to get the certification, but you've already done the work. And you want to know if you could take another class?
Yes, like similar.
So Fatima, I would suggest you go back to where you got the certificate and ask them what else is available. We don't necessarily know.
Is Tacoma Park? I did in Tacoma Park.
Yeah, so if you go back to Tacoma Park, they should be able to help you with more things.
Okay, maybe if it is now, I think even. So, for example, I want to be I want to study the next level, LPN, licensed practitioner nurse.
Mhm.
So, is that a free program or money? How much I need to pay for it?
I think it's going to depend on what you're looking at. And we're going to get into a little bit of how to pay for things. So if you can hold on that question a little bit longer,
Okay.
But it's going to depend on the organization that you're interested in too, what they offer. I've been surprised when I've looked on the Montgomery College website, how much they're trying to offer in nursing to attract students, just FYI. Yeah, Lydia.
Yes, and in Montgomery College, ESOL class, there is a program of about a CNA program yet, but right now, but the requirement is you must be a Montgomery College student. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be a Montgomery College student.
Yes.
Yeah.
You must take classes in Montgomery College, ESOL class or ESL class right now. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going then.
Yeah. Good questions though. Okay, we were talking about the different types of continuing education, and this is just a way of trying to help you organize your thinking. We could have organized this differently, but to help think about what type of learning might work for you. The first, and we've already referred to them, are the certificate programs. Where you get a certificate program, where you can find a certificate program is in a college, a community college. So college, the four-year colleges some of them do offer certificate programs. I'm pretty sure the University of Maryland is one. Community colleges, trade schools, and we'll be talking much more about trade schools next week, and then certain nonprofits. So why might you want a certificate program? We've already been talking about this with the example of nursing. Whether you're coming from another country and you need to get that kind of qualification, or for example, if you've left nursing for a while and you want to get back into it, somebody who took time off to take care of their children and now wants to become a nurse again, you may need to take a certificate program to re-qualify as a nurse, because things change, and the medical profession wants nurses to be up to current standard. Certificate programs are good to learn a basic skill. And we've mentioned this before, like for electricians, like for plumbers, like for pharmacy technicians. This is training to have a set of skills for a particular profession. And then finally, certificate programs are good for increasing your skill level. Like if my dad had decided, I really want to be able to repair these cars because I love cars. There are programs to teach auto mechanics at the level that the cars are running in this day and age. So those are examples of certificate programs. There are many, many, many kinds of programs. We're just trying to give you some examples. There are individual classes. So you're not going to get a certificate, but you certainly can learn. Again, where can you go for these? Community colleges, nonprofits, and nonprofits like the Literacy Council, museums, and we live in an area, the reason we're putting this one on this slide is we live in an area, DC, has an enormous number of museums, a tremendous source of information of certain types. So not to be ignored if you're interested in what they offer. And then of course, online. There's an enormous amount of information online. Why might you want an individual class? Well, to learn a language like English. Whether you want to take a class, for example, at the Literacy Council, or you want to do a class online, or take a class at the community college. Many different ways to take classes. To learn a computer program, you know, QuickBooks, that's an accounting application, for example. Google Suite, I think the Literacy Council teaches Google Suite, right, Raul?
Yes.
Okay. All we're doing is giving you examples of that's an individual class. There are different places you can go to get that class. Some of them are free, some of them may cost a little money. And then finally, there's the idea of, again, developing a personal interest. We've got a theme going here around cooking, for example, and that baker that you'll meet next week, or painting, for example, if you're really interested in the arts, or Deb and her pottery. There are nonprofits, museums. The museums here again are fabulous on paintings, art, and how to engage in that. So again, just different examples of how you can think about individual classes. The next type of continuing education is a formal or informal apprenticeship. Does anybody know what an apprenticeship is? I heard it, no. An apprenticeship is basically the opportunity to learn on the job. It's on the job training. In other words, you have a job and you're learning, and usually, formal or informally, there's somebody there that's teaching you, showing you how to do the work. And where would you find something like that? Well, there are the local labor unions. This gets into trade schools and how electricians and plumbers and heavy equipment operators learn their jobs. There's usually a union that's helping support these apprenticeship programs. Contractors, building contractors, if you're a carpenter, you're going to be taught how to build a building. You're not just going to be handed a hammer and then you start pounding away. There's somebody who's going to show you how to do it. Hospital programs are also very big in showing you how to do this work. So we're using as an example to learn from someone who has the experience or skill. So an assistant nurse learning from an experienced nurse over a period of time. An apprenticeship is normally for a certain amount of time. It depends on the type of job, how long that time is. And usually you are paid while you are learning. But there are some kinds of work you can use the job as a learning experience. We're using the example of a construction worker. Perhaps this was less formal. It's not, for example, a hospital program. So somebody is showing you as you're learning how to build a building, but mostly now you're working on your own, but just the experience of every day going to work. That's, you know, you can ask questions when you need to on how to build something. And what you're doing is you're using the job itself as a learning experience. And that opportunity to learn by doing can be extremely important, even if you don't have formal instruction all the time about how to do something. And then finally, another example is you volunteer in your area of interest. And we decided to use us. Deb and me are volunteers, right? And we teach. And we practice on you, and we learn how to teach. And we go to classes and we learn a little more. And that's the part of the way the Literacy Council develops its teachers. Now, we're not being paid. Literacy Council also has paid teachers.
It is a lady.
I'm sorry? Hello?
It's a lady.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyway, that's just another example of sometimes people volunteer at an organization and they get that experience. Maybe they'll get a little bit of coaching and training. And Deb and I certainly did get coaching and training when we started. And they practice. And so then we're using a little bit of that job experience too, to continue to learn. So that's the way of thinking about formal and informal apprenticeships. And then finally, independent study. Well, what is that? That can be almost anything, because it's you, in effect, learning through different sources to meet the goal that you have. So, for example, how can you put together an independent study? You can use museums, you can use libraries, you can use nonprofits. We put down, MoCo is Montgomery County Recreation Department. They offer a bunch of classes and other experiences. And then of course there's online. You can go out online, and sometimes I think you can learn almost anything online, or at least get started, get some ideas, get an idea of which way to go. And again, to get back to English, to learn or improve your language skills, there are libraries full of books that can teach English. There's online resources that you can go to practice your English or other language. There are nonprofits. There are all kinds of sources to do that. To develop a skill or a hobby like gardening or accounting or auto repair. Let's take auto repair for a minute. For example, maybe you start with, you just like cars. Then you go online because you want to try to figure out what's the problem that you hear in the engine. And you study, you research, you Google this and you Google that. And then you think, well, this is really interesting. Let's go to the library and understand more about how cars are designed and how engines are designed. And maybe you take it from there to the museum, the Science Museum downtown, where they've got information on internal combustion engines, and you're really getting into engineering. So this then gets very much into, what are your goals? How do you want to learn? Where do you learn best? And how much time do you have? Back to some of Deb's comments about how to think about your continuing education program. So that's developing a skill or hobby, and then just pursuing a personal interest, back to art, back to cooking, history. All of these resources, museums, libraries, nonprofits, are all offering possible places for you to start. And one area can help open a door to another as well. So what we were trying to do here is just give you a taste for when you're thinking, where do I look? There are lots of different places to start, and it depends on what you're most interested in and how much time you have to pursue that interest. And with that, I'll turn it back to Deb.
So one of the things that you just saw a lot of is that they're for the same types of interests and goals, you can go into different places and it will make a difference of how much it will cost you. So just like Fatima was saying, some things are free, some things that you're going to have to pay for. And so if you find that the programs that you want are things that you're going to have to pay for, you have to figure out how to pay for it. And so there's a bunch of different ways. And this is not very different from what we talked about last month for college. If you were in with us for those talks, you're going to ask your employer, because sometimes if it's going to be good for your job and good for the place that you're working, they'll help you fund something. And sometimes if they pay for things, then they'll say, okay, then you have to stay with the same job for a certain period of time after so that they get the benefit of it. You can apply for federal financial aid. Now, this depends on what kind of program you're in, whether that is going to be available or not. So you need to check on a lot of these things. You need to do some research. If you need a student loan, then you can do the things that we talked about again with college, is you can go to private places like the churches and the nonprofits and some of the special groups. Like if you remember last month, Ann talked about, you know, if you are a veteran of wars, there were special scholarships and loans that you could get. You need to talk to your bank about getting a loan. And then the thing about Googling and doing research is you can find a lot of information online. So you want to go online and Google what kind of scholarships are available for your industry or for your programs, and what kind of grants. And remember, scholarships and grants are things where you don't necessarily have to pay it back. Loans you will have to pay back. So if you can get some free money, it's a good thing, right? So you want to apply for every scholarship you can find. Now, why do we say that? We say that because free money means a lot of people want it. And so you might not get everything that you apply for. You want to apply for a lot of things so that you can hopefully get some of it, right? And then the last thing here is if you're in a program, a lot of times they will let you have a payment plan. Does anybody know what a payment plan is?
Yes,
Yes, what is it, Mimi?
that means payment like maybe you step by step, like month a month, or
Exactly. So instead of paying all at once, you can pay at different times. So maybe you could pay monthly, or maybe you could make 3 or 4 payments instead of 1. And so that can help you spread out the payments and not have to have it all at the same time. So you want to ask about that in the program that you're looking at. So then the other question that came up earlier is, where do you go for all of these classes and training? And there were a whole bunch of things that Barb just talked to you about, of different places that have these things. But the first thing you want to do is, if you're doing something that's related to your job, you would want to ask your employer if there's any training programs from the company that you're working with. And it could be formal or informal. So I know the Literacy Council is working with a landscaping company, and that training program is helping teach English to the people who are working in the landscaping company. So there might be things like that. There might be trade schools, and we're going to talk next month. We're going to have 2 weeks, next week, the second week of this month, next week is when we're going to talk more about trade schools. I hope that wasn't too confusing.
Yeah.
So you can check trade schools. Again, just Google it online. Local labor unions, we gave you an example of one of them at the end of this presentation. And then just go to different websites and go to YouTube videos and go to, when you start looking at things and asking and Googling, you're going to get a whole list of things and you just need to check some of them out. The other thing that's really, really important and useful, especially in this area, is we have two very, very good community colleges. And that's Montgomery Community College and Prince George's. And you can probably go to both. It's going to be cheaper for you in Montgomery because that's where we live. But you should just check the listings and see if there's anything that's interesting. And then the nonprofit websites, you know, on the Literacy Council website that we have, there's a lot of links. We have a lot of places that we list that can help you out with some of this stuff. The libraries have a lot of information, and they have them even on the website. And then when the libraries open again, a lot of times the librarians can help you. So I think the library should be opening relatively soon if you need to go do that in person. And then the Smithsonian Museum, you know, Barbara told you that we're lucky to live in an area where we're close to all of these museums that are in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. And the Smithsonian has a lot of things that they teach, and some of them are more interest-based, like art, and some of them are a little bit more practical. So you can check that out as well. Okay? Everybody good with that? All right, so here's a website. Somebody have a question? No, we just had a little extra noise. Okay, so the Literacy Council, you know already about this, and you know about the computer and digital skills that Raul teaches. You got some other links there as well on the Literacy Council website. And then here's a Montgomery College website for you. So again, that's just to get you started because that's not everything that there is. Remember, I just told you there was a whole bunch of stuff, right? So that was just getting you started.
I do think that Montgomery College link is a very good one. If you want, you know, if you're not sure where to start, my suggestion is start there because you get a sense of the different types of programs, different types of certificates. And that might be if you're just not sure how to think about all of this, then it might be a good place to explore first. And then oh, I'm interested in nursing. Well, look for that part of this website that's about nursing and see how much you can learn about what they offer, because that'll start to help you think through some of the choices. And when you learn what some of those choices are, then you can start thinking about that next set of questions. Well, is that what I'm looking for? Or am I looking for a bigger program, a higher level? And that would help you so that you don't feel like you're going around in circles. But I go to the Montgomery College website a lot, especially for these presentations that we've been doing, because it's been so helpful. This college also does have an office that helps students, so that if it looks like you're going down the road of enrolling in Montgomery College, and I don't have anything, I've never been there and I've never taken a class there, so I don't have any allegiance, I don't have any specific knowledge, but it looks like they also have people who can help you understand some of the choices if you're getting close to that oh, I think I'm interested in this program. Is there somebody who can help me? I think that that would also be useful to explore if you're really starting to like what you see. But that would be my suggestion for trying to organize your thinking, especially if it's job focused.
Thanks, Barb. Okay, so let's review what we did today. We talked about continuing education. What is continuing education? Remember, it's formal education of some sort, and you can do it a whole bunch of different ways. What were some of the benefits we said of continuing education? Lydia, do you remember any of the benefits? What were the good things that could happen out of continuing education?
Nice.
Yeah? Okay, how about Mimi? How about you? Can you tell us one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
After Mimi.
Okay.
Like plumbing, electrician, me?
Yeah, so job related.
Yeah.
Okay, Lydia, what else?
Increase your salary, improve the job you can get, increase
Yeah.
personal development, improve your life, and still provide
Yes,
stream of income.
excellent, very nice. Okay, so those are all benefits. And then we talked about whether a continuing education was right for you. So remember, we said 3 things. You want to understand your goals, you want to know your skills and talents, and then you want to know your resources. And when you know all of those, you can start to pick programs and figure out what you're going to do next, right? And then Barb told us a lot about how it's different from college. Usually it's a shorter time frame, it's less money, and you won't get a college degree. You may or may not get a certificate, depending on the program.
Hello.
Okay, and so then we talked about different types of continuing education, and that was what we just did a little bit ago, right? So we can go to a lot of different places for continuing education, and some of it has to do with classes, some of it has to do with apprenticeships, some of it has to do with our individual learning.
Yes.
Yes, okay, and then we talked about how to pay for it. And paying for it, you want to look at all the different ways that you might be able to pay for it. You want to look for if there's free money, or if there's courses that don't cost you much, or if you need to take loans or get scholarships or grants, or if you need to borrow money, or if you're going to be able to do a payment plan, right? And then we talked about where to go for it. And there's so many places you can go for continuing education, right? And it doesn't mean that just because you've chosen a particular area, that there's only one way to do it. So remember, we talked about you can go do apprenticeships sometimes for the same things that you would be able to go get a certificate at a trade school, or that you would take a community college course, or that you could go look at things online for yourself. So all of those different things, remember we talked about cooking or learning English. There are a lot of different ways to go do those things and learn new stuff about those particular areas, about cooking or learning languages. And so you just have to decide what makes sense for you. And so next week, we're going to talk a lot more about learning a trade. And when we started, we talked about what's a trade, and a trade would be things like an auto mechanic or an electrician or a plumber. And so we're going to spend a lot more time on that next week. So I hope you guys come back.
If you can give us links just to click and to register, it will be easy.
I think it's the same.
Because when I go to Montgomery County College website, I get lost. I don't know which one is.
Yeah, we gave you a link right here. And you're going to get a copy of this. Raul's going to send you a copy of this presentation when we get done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're up to the end. So are there questions that we haven't talked about yet or that you want to go back to?
My question is, when I get when they offer me, like for example, for me, I get a CNA, so I cannot get another certificate, right? Only one.
For that particular thing, but you could get a certificate for something that's related, right? You could get it, you could get, if you wanted to specialize in something in nursing assistance, you could probably get something else, but you need to check. Again, I would suggest that you go check with the nursing program and ask them what else you could get right now and then how long it would take.
Okay, thank you. I will ask my teacher, yeah. That's
Yeah.
Good idea. Yes, that would be a great place to go. Because, you know, we're not experts. We're trying to get you to places and recommend things, but we're not experts in everything that we talk about. We're volunteers, and if it's not our field, we do the best we can to help get you pointed in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so Raul, I think we are done for today.